Last year at the Grand Prix of Cleveland, Alex Zanardi and Gilles de Ferran raised dramatic finishes in PPG kart competition to a fine art. First, the Italian grabbing the lead on the last lap, then overshooting a corner. That allowed de Ferran to make the final pass and claim his second career victory. This summer, the finishes have been even more frantic. 2 races ago in Detroit, Greg Moore came from 3rd to 1st on the final go-round on Belle Isle.
Blundell slow. Moore's in the lead. Blundell is out of fuel. Second straight win for Greg Moore.
Then in Portland, Mark Blundell, Raul Boesel, and de Ferran produced the closest finish in series history. Today, the Cardiac Kids of Kart return to Cleveland. On a steamy 90-degree day on the shores of Lake Erie, Burt Lakefront Airport has been closed to traffic to make way for round 10 of the PPG Kart World Series. Welcome to the Grand Prix of Cleveland. For the last few races, the story of the season has been dramatic finishes, as you just saw. But the story of this race might well be down in turn 1 of this 2.1-mile racetrack. Year after year at Cleveland, turn 1 could mean the end of the day for many a driver, and with it perhaps championship hopes. Let's take you back to 1993, turn 1, and watch for the action at mid-pack as body parts fly, wheels bang, and for some drivers, the race is over. In 94, it was more of the same, and into 1995 and 1996, the action down in turn 1 at Cleveland is always amazing. With more on the story, here's Jan Beekes.
Well, Bob, why do you have so many problems down here in turn number 1, considering we're racing at an airport? This is a runway. It's 125 feet wide. 17 Indy cars would fit side by side. Well, because it's so wide, it turns out to be an irresistible temptation for these drivers that didn't qualify well to go to driver's right to try to go up the inside. But here's the problem. Drivers use these markers, the 4, 3, 2, 1, to choose where they're going to grab onto the brakes. Well, the more and more that you move over to driver's right, you lose that reference point. It's pretty much a gamble. When do you hit the brakes? And that's why all the cars pile up. Gary?
Well, yeah, and the men who are going to lead that wild charge as the engines come to life right behind us from the front row are the men that figured in the competition last year at the dramatic finish. Alex Zanardi with his 3rd pole of the year, the 9th of his career, and he starts from the coveted number 1 spot. He finished 2nd here last year. Who did he finish 2nd to? Yeah, right alongside. It's Gilles de Ferran driving for Derek Walker's team. He's the defending race champion. Now, right behind him, Michael Andretti and also Mark Blundell. But there's a guy I got to tell you to keep an eye on, even further back, way back, row 5. The name's Paul Tracy. He leads the championship points battle, and if he's going to lead coming out of Cleveland, he's got some work to do, Bob.
All right, thank you, Gary. Here's a look at the championship situation coming in. Paul Tracy, despite missing a race, leads with 100 points. Greg Moore, 2nd with 95, and Michael Andretti, 3rd with 91. 8 drivers still in it with a realistic shot at the PPG Cup and its $1 million bonus. But as Michael Andretti himself has said, the championship can be won or lost beginning this weekend. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Varsha, along with 3-time winner here at Cleveland, Danny Sullivan. Danny, it's hard to believe that on a racetrack this big, where the drivers have so much room to play with, they have to be so careful in 1.
Well, they do have to be careful in 1 because it narrows right down there, and it's so tempting to want to go down and take advantage of that. Remember, at this race, you can't let anybody get away because it's very difficult to make up that time. You've got to run hard all day long. It's only a 2-stop race, and the pit window is usually 1 or 2 laps, so you don't have any advantage to take there. Also, traditionally, we do not get a lot of yellow caution periods here where it's full course yellow. They'll just be in local areas, so they don't have a chance to bunch up. And this track also gets very slippery as the day goes on, and we've seen a lot of guys slide off toward the end of the race. This is a race you got to run hard all day, manage your tires, stay on the track, and be there at the end.
No question about it. The championship pressure is on. The first of 5 races on the next 6 weekends. But now to the matter at hand. A look at the starting grid for today's race. On the pole, as mentioned, for the 3rd time this year, Alex Zanardi, starting alongside his Brazilian Gilles de Ferran, who came so close 3 weeks ago at Portland. On row 2, Mark Blundell and Michael Andretti. His only win here came back in 1991. On row 3, Christian Fittipaldi, who highlighted his comeback with a 4th place finish at Portland, alongside Mauricio Gugelmin. His teammate scored the breakthrough win at Portland. Big Mo would like to continue the Pac West team's success here. On row 4, Brian Herta, fastest in the morning warm-up. And Andre Ribeiro, his best start of the year, comes in a new Reynard chassis, moving over from the Lola. Row 5, Bobby Rahal, the local favorite. His first career win came in the inaugural event here in 1982. And Paul Tracy, who won from the pole here in 93. Row 6, Dario Franchitti, fastest of the 8 drivers making their first Cleveland start. And Walter Salas, 4th quickest in the morning warm-up. This team won here a year ago. Row 7 is Greg Moore, who's closed within 5 points of the series lead. And Raul Boesel, his best finish this year came in Portland with a very close 3rd. On row 8, Jimmy Vasser, who had his first DNF in more than 2 seasons at Portland, Oregon. Next to Scott Pruitt, who today makes his 100th career start. He was 3rd quickest in the warm-up. Row 9, Parker Johnstone with 5 point-scoring finishes in the first half of the season. And Al Unser Jr., this is his worst starting position since the 1995 race at Nazareth. On row 10, Patrick Carpentier, the only driver in the field to have finished every race this season. And Michel Jourdain Jr., his best career start in his 2nd race in a Reynard. On row 11, P.J. Jones in the top qualified Toyota-powered car, and Max Pappas, Mad Max, makes his first visit to the home of rock and roll. Row 12, Juan Fangio II, overcoming reliability problems. Juan's now finished 2 in a row. Richie Hearn will be alongside, making a debut of a highly revised Lola chassis, particularly at the rear end. Row 13, Adrian Fernandez, who scored his 2nd top 10 finish of the year in the most recent race at Portland, and Hiro Matsushita of Japan, who finished in the points here back in 1993. And on row 14, Arndt Meyer of Germany, making his 5th start of the season, and Charles Nierberg, his first start of the kart series, who ran here in a Super V back in 1990. We'll be back with more live from Cleveland, the green flag coming up. Race analysis for the Grand Prix of Cleveland, a 2.106-mile temporary road circuit, newly remeasured this weekend. 90 laps of racing scheduled. Gilles de Ferran won a year ago, and the pit window, 27 to 32 laps. You must be very precise. As Danny Sullivan pointed out, do not expect yellow flags on a wide-open racetrack like this. Now let's talk about that track, Danny.
Well, of course, you can see the start line right here, but it goes down into this very tight corner down there. That's a sucker bet. Everybody tries to take advantage of it. And then they come out on this long straightaway out here in the back. Great spot right in here to do some passing. But again, this is flat and featureless. It's very tough to tell where you are. This is a great racetrack.
Well, here's a look at our stories today. Can we get a clean start down into turn 1? The heat is on. The temperature above 90 degrees and climbing. Stay out of trouble is the motto of the weekend. And the points chase, well, Michael Andretti said it. The championship is up there to be won in the next 6 weeks. The race is well and truly on. Alex Zanardi on the left in red. Gilles de Ferran in the white and blue car to the right of your screen as the drivers fall into their double file. 2 more turns to go. They'll be on the start-finish straight away. Will Alex Zanardi get on the gas quickly? He leads the field slowly off of turn number 10. The crowd of more than 65,000 comes to its feet. The green waves, we're underway, and they are 6 wide here at Burt Lakefront Airport. Zanardi cleanly into 1. Oh, that was nicely done by all 28 drivers.
Paul Tracy got affected a little bit, had to lift with one of the cars in front of him. I think that was Michael Andretti slowed.
Parker Johnstone getting very wide in turn 3. A quick right and left flick into 4, and then hard on the power down to turns 5 and 6. Alex Zanardi rocketing away. Gilles de Ferran in second. You note those bits of rubber out there on the racetrack. I expect we'll see a buildup of marbles today. Neither of the tire companies, Goodyear nor Firestone, appear to have much of an advantage, at least on the speed runs of qualifying. We'll see who does well over the length of a fuel load.
Saw Christian Fittipaldi lock up a left front there. You don't want to do that too early on. You'll flat spot that tire and create a problem the rest of the run.
Fittipaldi up from 5th to 3rd. Is Brian Herta making a move down the right-hand side of Mark Blundell, who got very wide. The winner of our most recent race in Portland. And now Michael Andretti comes calling on Mark Blundell.
Mark's obviously having a problem to move over right there. Look at
Is that Paul Tracy coming up the outside? Yes, Tracy passed Andretti, and both of them passed Blundell. Michael Andretti steering for all he's worth.
Well, he tried to do what happened at the end of the race last year. Paul Tracy went to the inside. He had to slow a little, and Michael tried to take advantage and get a run up on him on the outside. We saw that with Gilles de Ferran last year when he made the move on Alex Zanardi for the win in that same spot.
Paul Tracy started 10th, and he is rocketing forward. Tracy now shown in 5th place with Michael Andretti behind him, and Bobby Rahal comes down the inside of Blundell. The Englishman loses another position to a man who is the local favorite. He lives in nearby Medina, Ohio, and he has raced all of the 15 previous runnings of the race. The only man in the field to have done it.
And Bob, the reason that he is dropping back through the field is because he is inside the cockpit trying to change some of the components in there. They have called him to change the boost, the mixture. They wouldn't say specifically what it was. They said the car is okay. They're just instructing him to make changes, and unfortunately those changes are not working yet. He's dropping back quickly.
You ride with Dario Franchitti, getting his first look at the twists and turns, high speeds, and heavy bumps of Burke Lakefront Airport. Now we have word from the officials that Bobby Rahal will receive a black flag for passing before he reached the start-finish line on the green flag.
Should be right there. See him waving that flag in the left-hand corner of your screen.
Ah, what a disappointment for Rahal, who won the very first race held on what folks in Ohio call the North Coast. The order right now: Zanardi, de Ferran, Fittipaldi, Herta, Tracy, Andretti, Rahal, Blundell, Franchitti, and Mauricio Gugelmin rounding out the top 10. There you see them with their interval to the leader at the upper left corner of your screen.
We set up that championship scenario and how important it is for Paul Tracy to make gains and to get points here at Cleveland today. Alex Zanardi, on the other hand, his crew told him just before green, don't worry about the championship, just win the race. And more recently, they've now told him, great job on the start, now save a little bit. I assume that means they want him to dial back and establish a race pace, not show his full hand.
Well, we anticipate 2 pit stops, but if we do get a yellow flag, we may see the numbers being crunched down there in the pit lane.
Of course, it's easy to say that when you're out in the front and say, look, just go out and win the race. That's the best thing you can do for your championship, is you're going to score the maximum points. I think in Paul Tracy's, if they feel they don't have the car and everything's not right, it's like, hey, don't throw it away trying to make something out of nothing. Let's score some points here and at least go away with a few points.
There's Al Unser Jr. on the right-hand side of your screen. Bobby Rahal, meanwhile, has pitted and taken his black flag penalty.
And Bob, keep in mind the reason that he got the black flag was for overtaking on the start, and it is now electronic. They have now put antennas across the racetrack, so they do not have to do it by sight. They can do it electronically. Look at the computer printout after the start and see if anyone did improve position. So there's an excellent chance that Bobby, in fact, was not where he was supposed to be now that we have the computers at work.
Bobby Rahal re-enters the race in 17th place, so that was costly.
You saw that big cloud of dust just a minute ago in the shot we had on the screen there. What happens is that'll just filter right onto the track, and as the day goes on, it'll make this track incredibly slippery.
Oh, the fun of watching a race here. You see a driver way offline like Scott Pruitt was right there, and you think, oh, he must have a problem. Nope, he could be at top speed. That's just the line he chose on the wide open spaces of Burke Lakefront Airport. Looking back from Jimmy Vasser to Scott Pruitt, the winner on the streets of Surfers Paradise, Australia earlier this year. There's our top 12. We'll be back with more live from Cleveland. Stay with us. Welcome back to Burke Lakefront Airport. There is Andre Ribeiro of Brazil, who started this race 8th, got off on the grass in turn 1, went all the way back to 15th, as you can see, but he's working his way back forward to 12th, and he has a new tool to do that with, a new Reynard chassis, switching over from the Lola.
Well, I think that was a very good move for him. They were struggling with the Lola, as Lola's having some difficulties back home. believe they're in Chapter 11 or whatever, and they've got some problems, so they don't have the time to develop this car. They needed to switch there. The sponsor stepped up, said, hey, we've got to have our guy running in a competitive car, and he's proven that he's definitely got what it takes.
They got that car with the help of Derek Walker, and during qualifying, Andre Ribeiro was qualified ahead of Walker's man Gilles de Ferran, which could have proved to be embarrassing, but Gilles got back around. As a look at Greg Moore, who had a great run of 2 straight victories, youngest winner in PPG Kart World Series history. He's running in 12th, having gotten around Ribeiro, who's now back to 13th.
Andre slid a little wide in one of the corners, and Greg took advantage of it. That's the problem around here, and dove up the inside of him.
On board with Michael Andretti, who says he lost the championship or took a big step towards losing it in the string of races that begin here in Cleveland, to be followed by the street course at Toronto and then the great super speedway at Michigan.
I've got to tell you, these guys were trying to hold on up there. They're racing each other. You can't believe how hard they're driving each one of these laps. This is almost like a qualifying lap. They are driving as hard, as physical as they possibly can, and they've got to do it all afternoon, because if they lose any ground, they are in big trouble. This place is going to get slippery. They cannot drop back.
Danny, here's a complicating problem now for Alex Zanardi, who started from the pole. He's reported that he cannot hear his crew. The crew can hear him from the cockpit. He's been asking now for some kind of communication. He may be looking for a blackboard set up out there on pit wall to relay information to Zanardi, who sets the pace.
Well, Gary, of all tracks that we're on, this is a pretty easy place to do that, because they come right by the pit wall in a straight line. It's pretty easy. But you never like to lose your radio communication.
Had a great look at the backstretch with the help of our Honda Helicam. Now here's a new graphic approach to help bring you information about the race. We call it At the Line. As the drivers flash across the start-finish line, we'll give you the interval from the leader, in this case Alex Zanardi, back to the particular driver. And the length of time it takes the driver's name to spring up on that screen gives you some idea of how far in time he is behind the leader. As you mentioned, Danny, this race going down at a furious clip.
Yes, and from a driver's point of view, they know they've got to maintain this pace all day long, and that's tough. This is a very physical place. It's rough when you go off of the runways onto these transition areas right there. You can see on the screen the cars bouncing around. If you can see them moving up and down like that, they're getting bounced around a lot. Just stay on board with Michael here. You'll see him through this next series here, and his car's pretty good over the bumps, but those right there, they bang you in the car very hard. Somebody running off wide there. Now look at this. You can still get in there at sort of 3 abreast.
Brian Herta put 2 wheels off on the right side. Look at all the space and momentum that he lost.
And Paul Tracy, of course, took advantage of that. There was a slower car in there, so he might have had to run a little wide. See, he's just past the car. See, the blue and yellow car.
That's Charles Neerberg making his debut in the series. Herta way off the track. Let's look at it again from our Honda Helicam. Neerberg right there with Herta, 2 wheels off on the right side, and Tracy.
And the red and white car took advantage of it. That's what happens around here. He was trying to make something happen, Brian Herta. He tried to run out there wide, and he just didn't have quite enough room.
Michael Andretti, one of 2 drivers in the running for a $100,000 bonus from MCI in the MCI Million program. Mark Blundell is the other. There's the race leaders in Zanardi. Let's check some of the intervals. 2nd place man, Gilles de Ferran. 3rd place, Christian Fittipaldi. 4th now, Paul Tracy, Brian Herta, Michael Andretti, and Mark Blundell.
And he's obviously gotten that problem he had in the cockpit sorted out, whatever it was. I would believe that it was probably a pop-off valve that was blowing off because the temperature is a little bit different, and he had to get that settled down. He's coming back great guns right now.
Behind Blundell, Dario Franchitti is 8th, Mauricio Gugelmin 9th, Jimmy Vasser 10th, Scott Pruitt 11th, Greg Moore 12th, Andre Ribeiro 13th, Al Unser Jr. in 14th, followed by Patrick Carpentier, Raul Boisel, and Parker Johnstone.
And Danny, you were talking about what might have been wrong in the beginning with Mark Blundell. Just check with the team. They said it was a combination of trying to get the sway bars where he wanted them to be and the fuel mixture. Now, I also thought it would have been a boost problem, because normally if you're just making those changes, it wouldn't drop you that far back. But obviously, he lost some momentum trying to change 2 things at once, but now he's regained it.
Well, Jan, my question to you is, why is he changing the roll bars or anti-sway bars for some people? Why would he be changing that at the start of the race? Unless he had a big problem, and he shouldn't have been messing with the fuel mixture at the start. You usually run it pretty much about 96% for maximum, so you don't lose any ground at the start of the race, and then you start turning it down as the field stretches out. I'm a little confused with those maneuvers in the cockpit.
Well, I agree with you, and we will check into that further, but I have a feeling that although those things were set before the start of the race, that obviously something must not have been where it should be. So it may have been a case of having to fumble around. As you know, Danny, sometimes they change the positions of those fuel knobs so that if we happen to intercept a radio transmission about going to position 3, it's different from one race to another. Maybe that was the problem. We'll check in further with the team.
Good point. So many of the drivers have different settings out there. Now here are some numbers to check out. Alex Zanardi in first. His teammate Jimmy Vasser is 10th. Comparing their average speeds through the 3 segments we are timing around this 2.1-mile racetrack. As you can see, Alex Zanardi quicker just about everywhere. Yes, everywhere, although only marginally so in segment 3, which runs from down there in the turn 7 and 8 area up toward the start-finish line.
But let's not forget that he also has a clean track in front of him. Jimmy's got traffic back there. That can also affect you.
There's a look at the front runners. We'll be back for more of the Grand Prix of Cleveland after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of Cleveland, live here on ABC Sports. Now hovering overhead, giving us great shots of the wide open spaces here at Burke Lakefront Airport. One of America's most enduring corporate symbols, the Goodyear blimp. Goodyear invites both children and adults to visit their blimps on the internet at www.goodyear.com. And speaking of the internet, for complete coverage of the PPG Kart World Series, including the latest news, notes, and results, check out ABC Sports Racing Area on America Online, keyword ABC Sports. That was Gilles de Ferran here at Burke Lakefront Airport. We are lapping cars now. Paul Tracy in number 3. Here comes Brian Herta. There's Michael Andretti with Mark Blundell just behind him, and Art Meyer slips between.
Art Meyer, being in that yellow and black car, just kind of chopped across there. When you're being lapped this early on, you really ought to stay out of the way. So he's really holding up Mark Blundell there. Mark was right behind Michael. Now look at this big gap that he's got.
Mark Blundell has his Reynard with Mercedes power and Firestone tires now fully trimmed out for racing after an unusual series of opening laps where he was working hard in the cockpit, we're told, to try to get that car ready to go. And now he is climbing back up through the field. He runs in 7th behind Andretti. There's Paul Tracy. And Charles Neerberg drove this car in a Super V back in 1990. The oil man from Texas getting his first start in a PPG Cup car. Michael Andretti has a look around Brian Herta. 2 perfectly legitimate racing lines.
But see, he went wide, he cut up the inside, and he's got all that straightaway out there to go. It was a perfectly timed move. Brian's going to come back on him. It's very wide there. But Michael shuts the door very nicely.
So make Michael Andretti 6th. He drops Brian Herta to 7th. Check that. Andretti 5th. Brian Herta 6th. Once again, checking the intervals. And the speeds. Alex Zanardi, the fastest car on the racetrack, lapping at over 125 miles an hour that last lap. Stay with Michael Andretti for a moment now and make use of our timing system. This is the track map. The numbers in yellow are trap speeds, instantaneous moments in time, and the speed that the driver is traveling at that moment. The numbers in white, 111, 120 miles an hour, 137 miles an hour, are the average speeds over the length of that timing zone.
The timing zone, of course, being from the red at 171 clear around to the red at 94 being the first segment, with that slow 50-mile-an-hour hairpin in there.
That is turn 1, slowest corner on the racetrack, and the last lap average speed 124 miles an hour for the full 2.1-mile lap. Someone in the tires. That's Richie Hearn.
He is Lola well and truly in the tires.
And we have 2 flags waving from the flag stand. It'll be a full course caution. This is down in turn 1.
He's actually in the corner leading on to the pit straightaway there, and that's a very critical spot because there's no place else for somebody to go.
Let me check that. Turn 9. You see the flags waving at the scene. We'll take another look and see if we can figure out what happened. Here he comes. He'll be braking hard in a moment.
Whoa! Something, you see, something's down. It looked like he was almost going up the pit lane. Something's broken. Look at the rear tire right there. If we can go back and do that shot again and freeze it, you'll see that the left rear tire is already down, which is what caused the spin. Freeze right there. Oh, just a little bit forward. Stop right there, and you can see right here. See how that tire is already out of shape? It's already deflated. It almost looks like it's coming off of the rim. That's what caused the spin.
And a heavy spin it was. Heavy braking from very high speeds on that straightaway. He backs it hard into the concrete.
Well, let's not forget that's the fastest part of the track. You do about 185 miles an hour down into that corner. And look what those tires do their job.
There is Richie Hearn, the young California driver, now living in Henderson, Nevada, making his first visit to Cleveland. And it has been more rock than roll. There's been extensive revisions to the Lola chassis, such as the one Richie Hearn was using. As you see, the Target Ganassi team awaiting their men as we're under our first full course caution. The race leader comes in. So the pit stops have begun. We are on lap number 22. And you notice that line of cones marking the pit entrance lane. Until this morning, that was a long line of 8,000-pound concrete barriers.
Now, Bob, there's some discrepancy here because we have the leader on pit road, but supposedly the pit road is still closed. That was only 10.6 seconds for Alex Zanardi, a very quick stop, but I still see a yellow flag and a red one saying that the pits are closed.
Cars going by us include Michael Andretti, who did not duck in. Gilles de Ferran's crew was waiting. Dario Franchitti did get service.
There you see the sign on the left being held by an official and the yellow and white flags. The day glow orange background on that P means a closed pit. Now we saw several cars dive in at the last moment as though they were indecisive, and now we know why. Let's take another look. Following the safety car, there is Zanardi peeling away.
And they've got the pit sign right there, right on the left of your screen, the yellow flags. That pit is closed. Those pits are closed.
And Danny, the word just went down pit road from all the officials. Pit's now open, so this time by, they can legally come in. Michael Andretti did the right thing. He kept it on the 60-mile-per-hour limit, motored right on through, did not duck into his pit. He should not incur a penalty, I don't believe. De Ferran, meanwhile, stayed out. He didn't come in.
And we are being told that the cars that went in will go to the back of the field. There you see Chip Ganassi, whose week began with baseball's All-Star Game. He, of course, is one of the partnership group that owns the Pittsburgh Pirates in his hometown.
And Bob, what he is trying to tell the officials is that he heard over the cart radio that the pits were open, which is why we saw so many guys come onto pit road. So the flag said the pits were closed. They heard on the radio it was open. That's why there's a discrepancy.
Now you see the green sign on the left. That means pits are now open.
Well, Jan, if there was a discrepancy, you know, the driver still has to take charge. They've got that big red board up there that said it's closed.
Harry Gerald.
We're watching Derek Walker's team with service for Gilles de Ferran. Listening, everything routine, revs up, fuel in, gone. 10.3 seconds. Christian Fittipaldi, Brian Herta right behind him. Drag race out of the pits. They're 4 wide as they go by us.
And it is a very long pit out. They go all the way down to turn 1 before taking the longer radius corner and re-entering the racetrack. Mark Blundell presently shown as the leader, but we've got a ways to go, and Chip Ganassi has food for thought. Tom Anderson, his team manager, there with him. We'll be back.
Okay.
We are back live at Burke Lakefront Airport on a steamy, hot Cleveland day. Bob Varsha, Danny Sullivan, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerould with you for the Grand Prix of Cleveland. There you see Alex Zanardi, who was the race leader when a full course caution came out. There you see the kart safety team working at the site of Richie Hearn's big crash into the tires. Hearn is now out, as is Max Pappas, who has pulled his machine to the side of the road. Let's get down in here now from Richie Hearn.
Richie, it looked like maybe something broke on the car. Do you know what happened?
Yeah, I think I ran over some debris or something like that, because I think it pretty much blew the right rear tire as I was coming down the straight there, and it just, that was it.
We talked about the Lola. You had all kinds of new parts on the car, but it didn't make it go any faster. I mean, what's next?
Well, we had a lot of expectations for this weekend, and we had a lot of new front wing, a new gearbox, and I think the fact that the track is so bumpy really kind of nulled those changes out. Our car's been not very good on bumpy tracks, and I still think the changes were good, and I look forward to maybe some better changes for the smoother tracks coming up.
Okay, well, unfortunately, the next race at Toronto is bumpy too.
Yeah.
Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Yeah, and here's an interesting scenario here, the one that we don't normally see this early in a race, and maybe Danny Sullivan, you can address this. Look at the rubber buildup on the front tires that have come off one of these cars here. This is abnormal to my mind. They've taken a plate here and chiseled this clear so that they can get an accurate reading on tire wear, but look how much rubber's been built up early. They think a lot of this is probably coming down pit road, but certainly that seems to be unusual. Danny, what does that do to the handling of your race car if you don't get in and get tires changed?
Well, Gary, of course, that is very difficult to drive. It'd take a couple of laps of very aggressive driving to get it off. But what I would imagine happened is when that full course yellow came out, they all slowed down. They're not running as aggressively through the corners. They pick up everything. Then they come down that pit lane, and they run over everything, and it just picks it up. Remember one thing, when they're coming down that pit lane, they're coming down to change their tires, so it doesn't really matter at that stage.
There you saw Max Pappas's Archie Earl Wells car parked by the side of the road. His day is now over. Now let's talk about this scenario in the pits a little bit as the MCI sponsored team packs up to head home. Of the cars that came through while the pits were closed, they were Zanardi, Tracy, Gugelman, Franchitti, Jourdain, and Fangio. Now they took service. Michael Andretti did not. But what we are being told is even if you did not take service, you are going to be penalized. In the case of Michael Andretti, you will go to the back of those lead lap cars.
Well, that's absolutely right, because he drove through the pits. The pits are closed. They don't say to you, your pit is closed. They say the pits are closed. So it doesn't matter. Once you've entered that pit lane, you've broken the rule.
You've convinced me, Counselor. Now, when Michael Andretti came around to get his service, here's what happened. Tire change, fuel going in. Revs still up. Oh, but the fuel hose does not come out. A big fuel spill results, and that could have been a disaster.
That could have been a very big fire, because, of course, if it seeps down through that bodywork right there, the exhaust are right there, they're hot, they spurt some water on it, that should help it. But, unfortunately, he probably lost about a half a gallon there.
Not the first time we've seen a bulky fuel nozzle this year. We'll take a timeout. You're high over Burke Lakefront Airport. We'll be back with more live from Cleveland. Back live in Cleveland with auto racing. Coming up next on ABC Sports, final round coverage of the Ford Senior Players Championship. Larry Gilbert has broken out of a four-man logjam at the top of the charts. He leads the field at this moment in the final round. You'll be seeing it coming up next on ABC Sports. Then tonight on ABC, outstanding all-family entertainment with Second Noah and America's Funniest Home Videos. Then Jane Seymour stars in the Sunday night movie presentation of A Passion for Justice. All tonight on ABC. Here in Cleveland, we are still behind the safety car. Our full course caution continues. Now here's another new development in our coverage. Tracking the laps since the last pit for various cars in the field. And notice Mark Blundell has yet to pit, and he is in his fuel window right now. So we can anticipate, Danny Sullivan, that he will come in before they go green.
I would think so, because it would be very silly not to. He's got to be close, even though he's saving fuel on this yellow. But he doesn't have a lot left in that tank. And I think what they want to do is go the maximum they can, hope for something to happen later on, and maybe make it in one stop in the rest of the race. And he would be about one of the only people that can do that.
As you see, Alex Zanardi and Paul Tracy both have completed 5 laps since they pitted, but those have been yellow flag laps. Let's get down to Jan Beekes.
Well, Chip Ganassi's up here on the radio with Alex. What on earth happened on that pit lane deal? He's listening to Alex now as we speak, as they're trying to change the order of the cars on the back straightaway. Didn't get a word with Mike Hull in the meantime. Mike, I know you guys are trying to sort out the order of the cars. Chip, are you done? What happened on that pit lane violation?
Well, apparently what was said over the kart radio and what was shown on the sign were 2 different things, so we're just trying to figure it out right now.
You heard that the pits were open when in fact they weren't?
Yes.
Thank you, Chip. Obviously, he's got some more important things to do right now, guys.
Thank you, Jan, and let me correct, that's Mike Hull standing with team owner Chip Ganassi. Tom Anderson is overworking Jimmy Vasser's race. There is the scene. There is Zanardi in the pit lane. As you can see, the sign very definitely says pits are closed, and that left Zanardi with a quandary. While we continue to shake this one down, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Welcome back to Burke Lakefront Airport. Tomorrow night on ABC, who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Well, nearly everyone, in fact. In Wolf, Return of a Legend at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. Then William Hurt stars in the network premiere of Trial by Jury, the Monday night movie here on ABC. Packed grandstands here at Burke Lakefront Airport as we remain under a full course caution. Because this will be a single file restart, those who violated the closed pit moments ago will find themselves at the very tail end of the field.
But Bob, this actually might work out to be a blessing for them, because a lot of them just came in, tanked up, put enough fuel in it that they're only going to have to make one more stop before the end of the race. The other guys are probably going to have to stop twice just for a splash. So if we don't get another full course yellow, it might play into their hands.
And one man who has yet to stop at all is right there at the head of the queue. That is Mark Blundell. And as you take a look at the running order, every other car on that list has pitted at least once.
I don't understand that strategy, because he's got to be low on fuel.
And once again, he passes the pit in. And he is ready to lead the field. Oh, and he got a green flag, and he almost threw it sideways.
He got it sideways, but he caught it.
Green flag, Gilles de Ferry. Going to give Mark Blundell plenty of room. No, he'll turn down the inside. Blundell goes way wide, gives up 2 positions. He rejoins in 3rd.
I think he must have too much of that build-up on his tires there, because he hasn't stopped. His tires are probably dirty. He can't get any grip.
The question is, why did he not stop for fuel? On board with Christian Fittipaldi, driving with a brace on his leg after his accident in Australia back in April. That left him with a broken right leg.
I have the answer for you guys as to why he didn't pit. They were having communication troubles, which is pretty hard to believe considering they had that much yellow running. But I just overheard an engineer down here from Mark Blundell say, hey, we've only got 3 more laps left of fuel.
Well, they'll be waving his pit board frantically when Mark Blundell comes by to get him in and get fuel.
Let me tell you, if you'd had that much problems, why wasn't the guy out there hanging over the wall with the yellow as long as they were, waving for him to get into the pits and fill it up?
Cars bouncing down the front straightaway, coming through the heat haze. Onto the start-finish straightaway, 2 and 3 wide once again. It's Walter Salas in the white car. Bobby Rahal on the inside, and Adrian Fernandez sneaks through as well. 2 and 3 positions at a time, gained or lost down in 1.
And Dario Franchitti, and look back there on the inside or the left side of your screen, that red car looks like it's Zanardi.
Greg Moore got off on the grass on the start-finish straightaway that time by. A wild and curious race here. Now, Alex Zanardi got a black flag last time by, and he drove right by it. He did not pit.
They give you a couple laps with that black flag. They want you to stop right away, but they won't stop scoring you for a couple of laps.
There is Zanardi for coming in for that extra service and violating the blend out line. Alex Zanardi, he'll get the black flag again. There you see it waving. Now keep in mind, they were having communications problems earlier. We still can't figure out how. They had that discussion about whether to pit or not to pit. So Alex Zanardi could be looking at a big problem. Now there's debris on the racetrack right there. Looks like someone's front wing end plate. In fact, it's come off of Charlie Nierberg's Lola. Well, way outside.
Way outside in the dirt. Got it very sideways.
Mauricio Gugelmin just behind him. We'll see what Zanardi does this time by. Now he has to be very careful. He is 5th in points at this point of the season. And there you see Mark Blundell. It appears that the engine has coughed. He's going very slowly. Certainly slower than the 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit.
Zanardi's coming down the pit lane as well right now to take that black flag. I'm sure that was for a restart violation. They probably jumped the start.
We had an opportunity to watch Blundell stop. It didn't look like they made any particular changes to the car. It was 12.05 seconds, so a pretty quick stop, but obviously the timing for this was not what they wanted. It's going to be a huge penalty for Blundell.
Gilles de Ferran is the race leader. Christian Fittipaldi second, followed by Jimmy Vasser, Brian Herta, Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, Andre Ribeiro, Al Unser Jr. now 8th, Patrick Carpentier 9th, and Parker Johnstone is 10th.
And Bob Marcia, one name you didn't mention, and he's hot, Michael Andretti. They and their crew were under the same assumption that I was when he came down pit road and did not actually enter his pit box, that they were going to be all right. They have since found out that they weren't all right, and they had to move to the back of the line. He's 14th, I believe, and he is an angry Michael Andretti right now.
Thank you, Gary. Alex Zanardi shown in 22nd, Mark Blundell 23rd. So that was a costly situation for them. We are past the 1/3 mark as you look at Brian Herta. Scott Pruitt just behind him. And the gap that you see on the left over the last 3 laps has come down a lot. Greg Moore there as well, and he is in a position fight there. Scott Pruitt runs 5th, Moore is 6th. Here comes Jimmy Vasser running 3rd, then Herta, Pruitt, Moore, Ribeiro, and Al Unser Jr. Then Patrick Carpentier. All of these cars running for position. Then Michael Andretti, who's all the way up to 11th behind Parker Johnstone. Once again, measuring the intervals at the line as the cars cross the start-finish line. Timed for the interval behind the race leader, Gilles de Ferran. You ride with Raul Boesel. The race continues here at Cleveland. We'll be back. Brian Herta running just ahead of Jimmy Vasser with Scott Pruitt just behind. Here's how Brian Herta got there.
Right here you see the 2 of them coming out right there. Brian Herta behind, dives out, clean pass, under braking, right to the inside. Nothing Jimmy could do about it.
I can tell you guys the reason that Jimmy Vasser is having trouble, just having spoken with the team, he is having some understeer, which a lot of people are talking about push through the corners. Maybe while you're on board you can see it. When the track gets hot, he is not able to turn the car as well as he would like. A lot of people complaining that as the sun beats on this racetrack, they get more and more push. Also, Jimmy Vasser at the moment is having to save fuel. Anybody who wants to do this in 2 stops, at least in this case with a Honda, they have the fuel turned way down.
So Jimmy Vasser has problems. Let's be clear about what happened to his teammate, Alex Zanardi. In addition to pitting while the pits were closed and taking on service, he had to go to the back of the line for that. He was also convicted of passing cars after the blend line. He did not blend as he was supposed to as he exited the pits.
What that means is when you leave the last pit, there's usually some cones down. You look across from the pit lane to see who's on the track. This is under a yellow condition when they're on a pack up behind the pace car. You're supposed to blend in behind that car that you look across and see if you can get in there. And unfortunately, when he went back out, he jumped in front of 3 cars that were in front of him on the track, and he made a violation.
He got around Al Unser Jr., his teammate Jimmy Vasser, and Brian Herta. Although in his defense, it is a very difficult blend line here. The pit exit, as you see, P.J. Jones pulling in, one of Dan Gurney's All-American racers. He's been going slow on the racetrack for a while. Visor is up. Looks like they're going to give it another shot. As the driver looks over from that blend line, he still has to go all the way down to turn 1, several hundred yards down the track, and then blend in.
And he comes right from the left of your screen right there. He comes right out of where our camera was, and that's where you're supposed to blend in.
Now, if the race were to end at this moment of the points distributed, these would be the standings. Greg Moore in the championship lead for the first time this year by 2 points over Paul Tracy, with Gilles Lefebvre in 3rd and Michael Andretti 4th. Jimmy Vasser, Scott Pruitt, and so on down the line. As we approach the halfway mark of this race, you see Greg Moore. He'll be going to his home country of Canada for the next stop of the PPG Kart World Series for the street race in Toronto. Closer inspection of the battle for 5th at the halfway point. Scott Pruitt and Greg Moore. Just fractions of a second separating them. And Andre Ribeiro is right there. All of these cars in this line battling for position. From the Honda Helicam, high over Burke Lakefront Airport, along the taxiway, and then to runway 6 left. Another taxiway to runway 6 right, turns 3 and 4. And up through the gearbox. Very fast left-hander. Now approaching turn 7, where we've seen lots of spins throughout the weekend. Jan Beekes.
P.J. Jones's day has just ended. P.J., what put you out?
The shifter cable broke and kind of ended it. Car was great. I mean, we did a great job. The guys did a great job setting the car up, and you know, it's a horsepower track, so it kind of hurt us. But you know, there's not more you can say. I think we did our job, and I think the whole team did a great job. And you know, we got 1 lap with Juan out there, so hopefully we can bring it home.
How close is the horsepower now with the Toyota? Are you gaining on it?
Well, we're pretty far down. I think we're over 10 miles an hour off on the straightaway right now, and it's pretty hard to overcome and try to pass people, you know, with that kind of deficit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
P.J. Jones was the top qualified Toyota-powered car in this race, inside row 11, but his race is now over. Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, Andre Ribeiro. Amazing the difference getting that Reynard chassis. The difference it has wrought on Andre Ribeiro. He was monster in qualifying.
It's interesting down here already. Pit strategy being played out. All the calculations being made to see whether these teams can still salvage a 2-stop race. That was the desire going in, but with most of them coming in when the pits did open legally at lap 24, that was a little bit early. So we know that Jimmy Vasser, for instance, has leaned down just a bit trying to conserve. We understand that the Brahma cars of Scott Pruitt and Raul Boesel are doing the same. They're targeting lap 59. That would mean 31 laps to go in the final 35 gallons of methanol. It could be very interesting again at Cleveland in terms of fuel management, just as it has been in so many of these other events this season. Jan?
Well, we just checked in with Bryan Herta's team, and they, like you said, Gary, are working with the calculations. They feel that Bryan Herta, with his Ford power, ought to be able to make it a two-stop race. They are running the fuel accordingly. So the idea is you've got Hondas, Mercedes, and Fords with a chance to do it. Who has the best fuel economy? Well, we know Mercedes does. We'll have to see what happens with the Ford and also with the Honda.
Well, Jan, you know, of course, what's going to happen too is it's going to depend on how much you're racing at that stage at the end of those 31 laps. If you've got a battle going, the guy with the most fuel can turn his mixture up. He's got a little bit of an advantage.
Bryan Herta currently running in third. His best finish at this race is a second place. Driving for the home team for Bobby Rahal. Though arguably Steve Horn's Tasman team, based down in Hilliard, Ohio. Also local favorites. We'll be seeing them on home turf later this year at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Average speeds for Gilles de Ferran in first, Bryan Herta in third through our three-time segments. Very, very close. Is it too early to talk about back-to-back wins for Gilles de Ferran? It has never been done here at Cleveland. He won the race a year ago. He runs out front right now. We'll be back in a moment. Coming up next Saturday on ABC Sports, the Valvoline Professional Boxing Series presents an IBF WBO Featherweight World Championship. Undefeated champion Naseem Hamed takes on Gerardo Cabrera from Wembley Arena in London, England. Saturday, July 19th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 Central on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Welcome back to Burke Lakefront Airport. We want to send a special note to our pit lane colleague, Jack Arute, who's back home, a little bit under the weather. Jack, we hope you feel better much more quickly than you probably even believe, and join us again here on the PPG Kart World Series. There is race leader Gilles de Ferran. There is Christian Fittipaldi measuring top speeds in the speed traps. 171 miles an hour at the start-finish line speed trap. 94 between turns 3 and 4. 105 between turns 7 and 8. And average speeds of 114 miles an hour for segment 1, 121 for segment 2, and 136 miles an hour on that long front straightaway where Richie Hearn suffered a big spin and crash earlier in this race. We've got blue tire smoke down in turn 1 and cars shuffling. Greg Moore in the middle of that one. Moore charging forward around Scott Pruitt. Moore going for 5th place, dropping Pruitt back into the clutches of Al Unser Jr. Saw Jimmy Vasser at the bottom of your screen. Here comes Moore, then Pruitt. 5th and 6th, and Al Unser Jr. in a long train of cars. And there's Paul Tracy.
Did you see that move? He went right around the outside of Andre Ribeiro. That is a very quick corner. That's a 4th gear corner.
Riding with Michael Andretti as he chases Parker Johnstone, 10th and 11th. Oh, he's got Hiro Matsushita now between himself and Johnstone, the next car up the road.
But he's got Paul Tracy right behind him in that red and white car.
Andre Ribeiro is dropping back. He must have a problem. He was up in the top 10. Ribeiro now shown in 12th and fading. Michael Andretti in the Swift chassis, Paul Tracy in the Penske chassis, both on Goodyear tires. Andretti using Ford power, a Mercedes for Paul Tracy.
Update on track temperatures. Bob, last report now up to 125. That's within 5 degrees of the highest temperatures that this series and these drivers have seen at any time this season. It's up approximately 5 degrees from the start of the race.
Well, we expected it would get hotter as the day goes on, and it certainly is. Watching the heat haze on the front straight. Patrick Carpentier, Paul Tracy, Michael Andretti. Here is Tracy. There is Adrian Fernandez, Andre Ribeiro's teammate, using the Lola chassis. Fernandez currently shown in 20th place, so we asked him What would the folks back home be watching to see you in action? He said they'll be watching TV Azteca, the network in Mexico City. No fewer than 75 relatives drawing together to watch Mexico's favorite son in the PPG Kart World Series. You notice the front end treatment on that Lola. New nose for that car and a completely redesigned rear end, including the turbo housing, the suspension points, the rear deck. It's a very different looking car. As I mentioned, Fernandez in 20th. He is very optimistic about their ability to get this Lola into a competitive situation. Now, some of you might think that's a bit of whistling past the graveyard, but Steve Horn, his team owner, says they remain committed to the Lola company and its performance difficulties right now, as well as financial ones. In fact, Andre Ribeiro plans to use both cars in testing and practice, the Reynard and the Lola, and will use whichever car appears to be better suited to the weekend. Now let's check our pit strategy with the fuel window approaching. Laps since the last pit stop for DeFerrin, Fittipaldi, and Herta. And as you see, we are in the pit stop window. That includes 11 laps run under the yellow flag, so they could go perhaps a little bit beyond the pit window you saw there.
Christian lock up that right front tire, just smoked a little bit and stopped right there in your screen. But he's got a pit stop coming up soon, so that won't give him too much of a problem.
And Danny, those pit stops, checking with those towards pit in. Paul Tracy is expected to be first on lap 58. Then Alistair Jr. on lap 59. And then for Brian Herta, they're going to gamble. They really feel they need to get to lap 60 if they want to truly make this a two-stop race. Remember, they have Ford, the other two with Mercedes.
And yet at the other end, it looks like DeFerrin on 59. Fittipaldi, we believe, will follow him down pit road. We may see Bosell from the Brahma team of Pat Patrick in on 58.
Up a gear, then down a gear is Michael Andretti as the Grand Prix of Cleveland continues to unfold. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. Live at Burke Lakefront Airport, the Grand Prix of Cleveland. Race leader Christian Fittipaldi follows the previous race leader Gilles DeFerrin into the pits. DeFerrin is in and out. Let's get down to Gary Gerould.
We wait with the Newman Haas crew. They saw right in front of them a one-lap earlier stop by Gilles DeFerrin at 12.5 seconds. Now the Hunt team goes to work. This one lap could be critical in terms of fuel consumption late. Oh, the jack's gone down. They've got a major problem on the right rear. They go for a manual jack. They've had a full collapse, and it may have even damaged the suspension. No, they didn't get the tire on the left rear, nor the right. Oh, big-time problems for Fittipaldi. Christian throwing his hands up. Now they get the car in the air. His teammate Michael Andretti is being serviced right behind him. Michael being held for the moment. It's now over 30 seconds for Christian Fittipaldi, who's been the race leader. Now he's ready to go. Get ready right behind him. That was a 35-second stop, and oh my, what heartbreak for Christian Fittipaldi, who had been the race leader.
And what a drag race to the end of the pit out. Fittipaldi and Andretti, the two Newman Haas teammates. Oh, and Fittipaldi got the worst of it. Michael Andretti like a rocket through turn 1 and 2.
Well, don't forget they meet the cars coming through turn 1 right there, and Christian had to wait on those two cars. Michael sliced up through there, and look at where he is. He got a big advantage.
Well, during the 7 races or so that he missed with that broken leg, Christian Fittipaldi was dying to get back into the race car. He came back at Portland, was running in the top 3 on the last lap of the race, was passed and dropped to 4th. He was furious about it afterward. Now he gets a taste of the lead and sees it go away with a problem on a pit stop.
Now he's going to have to emotionally remain calm there and try to regroup and get it back. He still has a very quick car. He doesn't need to make a mistake at this point.
Jan Bikas in the pit lane.
While you're watching Christian Fittipaldi, you may have seen in the background Brian Herta go flashing by. He came in and made a 14.18 second stop. No changes on the car. They got all the fuel. Now they're going to hope that they can make it to the end of the race. Also with the Penske team, both drivers, Paul Tracy and Alistair Jr. were in and out, but a lap earlier at 12.5 seconds.
Look at these guys, Brian Herta and Mark Blundell. They're just swapping back and forth.
Getting back to Christian Fittipaldi, that lap or so in the lead was his first since the Road America round a year ago. So you can tell why he was frustrated. Good look there at Bryan Herta. Juan Fangio running behind them in one of the Toyota-powered Reynards for Dan Gurney. Gilles de Ferran is the race leader. And there he is, looking for his second straight victory here at Burke Lakefront Airport. He would become the first man to do it in 16 runnings of this race. And after the rocky start the season got off to for him and car owner Derek Walker in their first season together, it would be a welcome 20 points.
Well, and let's not forget he's been on the podium quite a few times in the last couple of races. They're scoring points. If they can get that those early mishaps out of the way and still be in the hunt for the championship, they've done tremendously well.
Now our timing and scoring is suffering a problem. We are told that Gilles de Ferran is the race leader. Bryan Herta runs second, Greg Moore in third. Check that. Race leader is de Ferran. Second is Blundell. Third is Bryan Herta. Then Greg Moore in fourth. Jimmy Vasser fifth. And Al Unser Jr. in sixth.
But don't forget, Blundell had that odd pit stop where he stopped a little bit later. He's done well, but he still has to stop again.
63 laps complete of 90 scheduled.
And this is where strategy will come into place, because Blundell will stop so late that he won't probably have to stop again, whereas Blundell will probably have to stop to take on a splash of fuel.
And Danny, it turns out that checking with Bryan Herta's Shell team, they say they're good to go on fuel, that they were able to stay out long enough that he just feels that if they can gradually reel in towards the front, fuel is not going to be a concern. So a lot of happy people, at least at this stage, as long as they're telling us the truth, they have enough fuel to go to the end.
Good caveat there, Jan. A look from high overhead. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company has dispatched its blimp Spirit of Akron to give us an aerial view for today's Cleveland Grand Prix, and we thank them for it. On board with Bobby Rahal, the elder statesman of the series right now. Although he'll probably put a hand on my shoulder for me having said that next time we see each other. Down into one, following the tracks of rubber. Now you're actually getting a better view of that corner than the driver is, sitting a good foot or so below our camera.
Oh, absolutely. He does not have this view. That's a better view there of what he's seeing. That's mounted right in front of him. Just shows you there's a lot of blue sky, a lot of great concrete, but it's hard to pick up the reference point of where those corners are.
Less than an hour after this Grand Prix of Cleveland is over, Burke Lakefront Airport will become exactly that once again. Airplanes will be taking off and landing. The track staff has done an amazing job getting this place ready to race in mere hours.
We were just checking with Derek Walker on the situation for Gilles de Ferran. We had mentioned we thought he was coming on lap 59. Well, that's what the crew thought too. But because out on the far east end through turns 7, 8, and coming up toward 9 and 10, radio communication sometimes is not a full 100%. De Ferran didn't know for sure. Rather than to take a chance, he just brought the car in. The crew responded magnificently with a 12.5-second stop. We asked him if the one lap could make a difference on fuel consumption, and Derek emphatically said, "We are okay."
You ride with Jimmy Vasser. That's Michael Andretti up ahead, unofficially 6th and 7th right now.
Did you see how close Jimmy Vasser and Michael Andretti were going into turn 1? They almost touched there.
Mark Blundell pits. This is from second place. And he is away. Blundell looking for his second straight victory. Why not? Greg Moore did it earlier this year, taking your first and second career wins in succession. On board with Raul Boesel. Left hand on the wheel, right on the shift lever. We're still having problems with our timing and scoring, but we're keeping track of the runners as best we can. There is Greg Moore in the blue car. Just behind him is Alex Zanardi as Juan Fangio moves over. They're going to go 3 wide, headed for 1.
Greg Moore got held up there by Fangio through that tight chicane.
Earlier we heard P.J. Jones, Fangio's teammate, say they are down 10 miles an hour in straightaway speed, and Moore smoke from the back of the car. Greg Moore's race may be over.
He's gone straight down there. He's going down the runway. His race is over. He's going to pull down there where the safety crew is. He might try to continue on and get all the way around, but that's the shortcut.
From high overhead, the cars look so tiny on the broad expanse of runway here at Burke Lakefront Airport. And all that track is of no use at all right now for Greg Moore, except to get himself away from the field, because he is done. Tough break for the young Canadian, youngest winner in PPG Kart World Series history. 68 laps complete of 90 scheduled. We'll be back live in a moment. Next Sunday on ABC at 5 Eastern, 4 Central and Pacific. Coverage of one of the greatest events in sports, the Tour de France, stage 14, Le Bourg-Doisson to Courchevel, a 21-kilometer climb, then a 280-meter straightaway. It's an amazing event. The Tour de France next Sunday on ABC Sports. Back at Burke Lakefront Airport, there is some wire twining going on. Gary has more.
Well, down here right behind the Chip Ganassi pits, there is some frantic activity, and it's interesting to note that members of Omega Timing, according to their shirts, are doing much of the job, but also John Faber, who's one of the engineers for the Penske team, is here on hands and knees, and they are doing as quick a repair job as they possibly can, hoping that they've isolated a problem that has impacted timing and scoring monitors all up and down pit road. And I think you mentioned Bob up there in the booth.
Gone up here as well about 15 laps ago. Here is the leaderboard right now after 71 of 90 laps. Gilles de Ferran, Brian Herta, Alex Zanardi, Al Unser Jr. having a great run after 5 DNFs in the first 9 races of the year. Michael Andretti runs right behind his old rival, and then Scott Pruitt. There is Paul Tracy, with Christian Fittipaldi just behind him. Fittipaldi, the victim of an overlong pit stop when the rear jack collapsed while the rear wheels were off the car. Took over a half a minute to get service complete. Onto the front straightaway. .72 laps now complete. 18 to go. Paul Tracy turning wide. Christian Fittipaldi got under him. Once again, this broad canvas on which these artists can sketch their masterpieces, hopefully without tangling their brushes. Let's take another look at what happened down into turn 1. Watch Paul Tracy in the bright red and white car number 3.
Oh, he locks it up, gets a little sideways, recovers very well, gives Christian plenty of room, but he had the ground to go out there and keep accelerating because it's so wide out there.
Here's Michael Andretti pitting from 5th place.
Did he say coil?
Uh-oh, the engine cover is coming off. Lee White is on the radio with Michael Andretti. Gary Gerould?
They just came in and he shut it down. We heard the roar and we were about 3 pits away. They're working now with that coil or cover off, and Michael frustrated here. Don't know if the day is going to be over or not, but certainly a very, very tough blow for this team. Checking electronics, the usual checks, hoping that they can still get it refired, but it doesn't look good right at the moment.
Brian Herta with Alex Zanardi just behind him and Arnbeyer just in front as they go into one. Remarkable that Alex Zanardi is back in this fight. The running order is DeFerrin, Herta, Zanardi, Unser, Pruitt, the top 5, with Bobby Rahal in 6th. So after all those troubles going to the back of the pack,
I think we also might have found that Bobby Rahal has passed Scott Pruitt. He's moving ahead actually on the track. We've been following this one, but I did manage to take a peek out the window.
You look out the window that way, I'll look out the window this way.
And guys, Michael Andretti did get refired. He's just left. He'll be going back out into turn 1 momentarily.
Well, the damage may be done to Michael Andretti's hopes in this race. Now, moments ago, Paul Tracy down in 1 again, this time with Jimmy Vasser.
A little piece of that's body work off of Jimmy. That's the rear wing that sits out there in front of his rear wheel. Just popped it up. He hasn't slowed down. Whoa, through the grass though with Jimmy with that pass by Christian Fittipaldi. Didn't leave him a lot of room. He's dropping a lot of ground now.
So problems for the reigning PPG Kart World Series champion, still looking for his first victory. He has lost an aerodynamic end plate, as Danny mentioned, sits right on the side pod just ahead of the right rear wheel. In that collision with Paul Tracy. Right now Vasser shown in 11th place. There you see the top 6. And Zanardi, as I mentioned, went to the back of the pack, made a black flag pit stop in addition to his routine ones, and yet he is back up in the hunt in 3rd place.
And Michael Andretti has gone down the pits another time, so he's obviously got a fairly serious problem. And that wing, did you just see that shot? That wing was laying out in the middle of the track there.
The laps continuing to run down. There you see the offending body part from Jimmy Vasser's car.
It's offline, but it's not as offline as you would like, especially when we've seen him coming out of there 2 and 3 abreast.
Anything offline at this racetrack has dirt all over it and grass. Jan Bikus with more on Brian Herta.
Well, we told you before that the team said it'd be no problem to go on fuel, and it looked like they were telling us the truth. Well, I think they are, because we just listened to a radio transmission to where they said to Brian Herta, use the button at will. In other words, that button gives you some extra horsepower, and he's going to need it to hold off Alex Zanardi.
And I'll tell you, from the Zanardi camp, they're cheering him on, and they say it's just pure speed on the racetrack. This guy has come back with a marvelous job. He may be using a lot of fuel. We asked if there was a concern. They say, no, we think we're good to go the distance, and he's putting big-time pressure on in the chase for 2nd.
12 laps to go next time by. Another dramatic finish on the horizon as the battle for position continues. Alex Zanardi down the inside of Brian Herta into 2nd place. This one is long from over for the Italian and his American rival. We'll be back with more live from Burke Lakefront Airport in a moment. Don't go away. All right, thank you, Mike Tirico. There is Alex Zanardi running in 2nd place, and he is closing on race leader Gilles DeFerrin, now less than 6 seconds behind him. Here was the pass as Zanardi went by Brian Herta at top speed on one of the infield chutes. Zanardi flashed into 2nd place and set out after the race leader DeFerrin. But a year ago at Laguna Seca, the final race of the season, remember the pass of the year? Brian Herta, the race leader, down the inside when Alex Zanardi off the track on the other side of the corner, back on and went on to take the victory from Herta. What a way to end the season. They are still talking about that pass, and right now Alex Zanardi is going to have to close further on that man. Now within sight of race leader Gilles DeFerrin, there could be another magic pass coming from the Italian.
And he wants to reverse those fortunes of last year, where DeFerrin passed him on the last lap to take that win.
4.2 seconds now separate the top 2 cars here at the Grand Prix of Cleveland.
He's catching him about a second a lap. But the real crucial part, I think, is how much fuel does DeFerrin have? Does he have to keep it lean down? Because we know Zanardi's got more fuel than he does.
There's Christian Fittipaldi battling with Paul Tracy. Down to Gary Gerould.
Michael Andretti, you said last year this was the stretch that cost you a run at the championship. Now you're out of this race. Is this going to be as critical this year in terms of the championship?
Hope not. If it is, we're in trouble. You know, I'm disappointed for sure. You know, to go this far, seemed like everything was going against us in the race, but we were still fighting back, and we were in 5th, fighting for 4th, and could have come out of here with the points lead. Now, who knows where we're going to be.
Tell us about that penalty situation when the pits were closed. You came in, didn't actually stop, went through, but still got penalized.
That's what I'd like to know what the deal was, because I never seen anything in there that says you can't just go through and not take on anything, you know. And when I came out, I actually lost, so it's not that I gained anything. So they're sort of making up the rules as they go along there. It's a little disappointing.
Frustration, dejection. I think that sums it up.
No question about it. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti's teammate Christian Fittipaldi runs in 7th place. That's Scott Pruitt in 6th just ahead. Paul Tracy in 8th just behind. Wheel to wheel into turn 3. Fittipaldi moves up another position. He is in 6th and on the charge with 7 laps remaining. The finishes we've seen thus far this year in the PPG Kart World Series have been simply unbelievable, and we may have another one in store. Now just 10 car lengths separate Gilles de Ferran. Oh, less than that now. Oh, Alex Zanardi.
What a move! He was not going to be denied passing that back marker and get held up. He just dove in there.
That was Juan Fangio, and I think they made contact. I think he just clouded him out of the way. What a rim shot from Alex Zanardi. Charging right up onto the gearbox of Gilles de Ferran. Now remember, 3 weeks ago, de Ferran had the race lead at Portland on a drying track using treaded wet weather tires, desperately trying to keep Mark Blundell behind him with the checkered flag. He wasn't able to do it. Lost by the smallest margin in series history, 27 1/1000ths of a second. Now, once again, he has mirrors full of a rival with 6 laps to go. Here goes Zanardi down the inside into 1. Here comes de Ferran on the counterattack. But at the rate Zanardi has been closing on him, I have to believe the performance advantage goes to Zanardi, who is now in the race lead.
And my feeling is it's got to be that he's got more fuel on board. He's running more fuel mixture. He's running it richer. He's got more power.
Well, we'll see if de Ferran can counterattack. Honda's been working very hard on its fuel mileage. Honda's in both of these cars now. And look at Zanardi draw away. Winner on the streets of Long Beach, California. He's becoming the temporary circuit master in PPG kart racing. There you see the running order through the top 6. Al Unser Jr. having one of his best races in a long time. Same goes for Bobby Rahal in 5th. Alex Zanardi flashes across the start-finish line. The crew is loving it. A possible $5,000 donation in store if he can win to the Target House at St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee.
Don't forget he's got that little $100,000 bonus from Marlboro if he does win this race.
That's right. The pole award has rolled over to a $100,000 bounty. There is Bryan Herta running in 3rd place. A remarkable race for Alex Zanardi. Bryan Herta finished 2nd in this race back in 1995. Right now he runs 3rd. Alex Zanardi continues to draw away from Gilles de Ferran. 1 year ago at this racetrack, Alex Zanardi charged up on de Ferran's gearbox on the last lap, took the lead, but overshot a corner.
Keep running the way you are.
That's Derek Walker telling his men, keep running as you are, with 4 laps to go. Gilles de Ferran was able to wrest the lead back from Alex Zanardi with a couple of corners to go and take the win. But he's going to have to pull up closer to the Italian if he's going to do it here today.
Don't forget that it's also a battle of the tires, because both those 2 cars are Reynards. Both have Hondas, like you said. But, of course, Gilles de Ferran is on the Goodyear tires. Firestone for Alex Zanardi, and some people have said that they feel that the Firestone does work better on very hot days, and believe me, this is one of them.
Very hot days and probably very low fuel. Alex Zanardi pushing forward.
Yeah, the Firestone engineers told us this morning in the practice session, we hope it gets as hot as he can possibly stand it. The hotter, the better. Maybe they knew something.
More than 3 full seconds now separate Alex Zanardi from that man, Gilles de Ferran, but he has slower traffic ahead. The first obstacle, Michel Jourdain Jr. from Mexico. Ahead of him, Jourdain's countryman, Adrian Fernandez. Ferran seems to have stabilized that gap to Zanardi. Maybe he'll have something for him in the closing laps. But they are running down quickly. 3 to go next time by.
And Zanardi, who had been knifing through the field, is now caught behind these 2 back markers for almost an entire lap.
Zanardi looks inside Jourdain, but he does not pass.
He did not want to take a chance there. If he had made contact, he could have knocked the nose off the car, anything, and put him out of this. He's got a good cushion at the moment on Gilles de Ferran.
2 laps remaining. The gap 2.5 seconds to that man, Gilles de Ferran. Brian Herta is 3rd, Allenzer Jr. 4th, Bobby Rahal 5th, Christian Fittipaldi 6th, followed by Paul Tracy, Scott Pruitt, Patrick Carpentier, and Parker Johnstone. We have our electronic timing and scoring back with us just in time to measure the margin of victory and the gap from 1st to 2nd as it continues to dwindle. Out on the backstretch, Juan Fangio's race is over with a plume of smoke from the back of his car. White flag waves, 1 lap to go. And now Alex Zanardi has clear track in front of him. Whoop, take that back. He's still got Fernandez out there. Jourdain pulled down and slowed to let the race leaders by.
That's a pretty big gap unless something goes wrong or he starts to run low on fuel. I don't think Gilles de Ferran can make up that gap.
A little over a mile to go for Alex Zanardi. Looking for his 5th career win, his 2nd of the year, following his win at Long Beach, California. And another step up the championship ladder. As the stretch run begins here at the Grand Prix of Cleveland, with races to follow at Toronto and Michigan, then a week's break before the final run to the season finale in September. Off the final corner he comes. The white flag is put away, and the checkers wave for Alex Zanardi, coming home 2nd. The margin of victory, 1.281 seconds, as Gilles de Ferran. Alex Zanardi has come from the back of the pack to grab victory here at the Grand Prix of Cleveland. What a race for Zanardi. Did you see him clapping the top of his helmet? I don't think he believes it either. How did I get here? We'll take a break and return to hear from our winner. There you see the top 6. Stand by for more from Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome back to Cleveland, Ohio. A beautiful view of downtown. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at the lower right of your screen, and absolute chaos in Victory Lane as Alex Zanardi has just completed his own personal victory tradition of carving donuts out there on the racetrack, spinning the car around and around to the delight of a crowd of more than 65,000 gathered here. There will be no back-to-back winners of the Grand Prix of Cleveland. Alex Zanardi has come through for his 2nd win of the year. Chip Ganassi there to welcome his man home.
Boy, it's wild down here, Bob. You talk about fiery temperament. It's on full display. That wild series of 360 spins out there on the racetrack trying to find his way to victory lane. We'll get a round chip and we'll get a word with Alex Zanardi if this crew ever turns him loose. He's going for the top of the car. You would have thought that he just won a championship. Hey, $90,000 plus the 10 he had in hand for winning the Marlboro Polo. Alex Zanardi, have you ever had a better drive going all the way back to, I believe, 22nd to come back and win a race?
I don't know. I have to check my files. Maybe Mike Knight may know. Today is his 50th win, and I'm so proud to be the one that gave us this present.
Thanks, Alex.
Proud for Target, for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, but more than everybody for my boys. They did terrific.
How frustrated were you when that blend line violation put you toward the back of the field?
Well, I didn't exactly know what it was because we missed radio communication from the beginning. And I had a lot of problems, so hey, if every time I have some problems I go that fast, I'll take it.
How about the victory celebration with all these 360 donuts you're spinning out here in this airport?
Well, I'll tell you that, the Honda engineers and which they did a terrific job, by the way, are going to be pretty angry with me tonight because I probably overhyped the engine, but hey, this Burby had to give me that. I think I deserved some fun after such a race.
Well, Alex Zanardi, the pandemonium continues. Let's go to Bob.
All right, thank you, Gary. Earlier today, Alex Zanardi said he wanted to make it as boring a race as possible. Instead, he made it as exciting as he possibly could have. Final results, Alex Zanardi, second win of the year over Gilles de Ferran. There you see 7th through 12th. Paul Tracy coming up through the field to finish in 7th place. Jimmy Vasser, the reigning series champion, still looking for his first win. His teammate comes home in victory lane today. Greg Moore among the cars that dropped out, as did Michael Andretti. Richie Hearn, the first car out with a big crash in the opening laps. All in all, an outstanding race here in Cleveland. Next week, it's the Molson Indy Round 11 of the PPG Kart World Series, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Be sure to join us for that. Coming up next, Senior PGA Tour Golf, the Ford Senior Players Championship. Stand by for final round coverage of that. In the championship, Paul Tracy has the lead. Greg Moore remains on 95 points. Gilles de Ferran now in 3rd. Michael Andretti in 4th. And Alex Zanardi coming up the charts with a bullet. It's been a great weekend here at the home of rock and roll. I'm Bob Varsha for Danny Sullivan, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald. Congratulations to Alex Zanardi. So long from Burt Lakefront Airport in Cleveland, Ohio.